Here we are all together again. We had me and Tev here Friday for the Week 8 preview. Didn't see Charlie, though. And then just a week ago with the Week 7 review, it was just me and Charlie. And there was no Tev. And now I feel whole again, having my two hosts by my side. And I'm looking forward to getting into this Week 8 slate of games that just came and went. And now all of a sudden we're halfway through the season, guys. Where does the time go?
I don't know, man. I just feel like there's so many games going on in a certain amount of week. I just feel like the week goes fast. And by the time we know it, it's football Sunday again. That's why I love football, man. Keeps me in the zone. I love it.
I feel like the week moves too fast and the season's moving too fast. Man, I feel like it was just yesterday we were getting ready for the draft.
Yeah, where does the time go? Now we're seeing players like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who had a quite close matchup last week, get quite a few games under the belt. With Stroud playing 7 games with a 3-4 record, and Bryce Young getting his first win, now 1-6 with the Panthers. We are seeing a lot of young players get a little bit of experience under the belt and new narratives being formed every week. And we're here to tackle some of them in our Week 8 review. And real quick, before we get fully started, I do want to welcome you guys and say thanks for coming through. I'm Matt.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Tev.
And this is the Senior Roundtable Football Podcast. So without further ado, we're going to get into this Week 8 slate of games, starting with the afternoon games. And I'm going to bring us to Miami to start, because the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins had an opportunity to see last week's surprises for both of them. A win for the Patriots over their superior rivals this season, the Buffalo Bills, and the Miami Dolphins, who dropped one against the Eagles, tough competition, but looked out of sorts while doing so. They were able to right the ship against New England and Bill Belichick, and Tua Tagovailoa was able to advance to 6-0 against the Patriots in his career. How are we feeling about that? What are our takeaways from seeing Miami get their 6th win of the season?
My takeaway for this Miami-New England game is that Miami is still kind of a fraudulent top-heavy team, because I feel like they still need to beat some of those better teams like the Eagles and potentially maybe the Jets coming up. We'll get to them eventually. But another one takeaway is that Tua is still a pretty good quarterback, despite the Patriots still has a solid defense. Tua Tagovailoa went for 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. And Jalen Waddle actually had a really good game this week. Same thing as Tyreek Hill. Both had over 100 yards and both had a touchdown each. The Patriots defense couldn't hold this Dolphins team again. And now the Dolphins might be sitting comfortably in the AFC East, but how long are we going to find that out?
So I like your point, Charlie. Just one thing I would like to change about that. I don't believe that the team is top heavy. I believe that the team is talented enough to match up with any of the top teams in the league. I want to challenge the coaching staff. Time and time again, we've seen this coaching staff crumble when it comes down to the games. Yeah, McDaniels is a lovable character. We love seeing the memes. We love seeing his interviews, and we love seeing his antics. However, when it comes to late season and when it comes to those big games, time and time again, we do see them crumble. We do see them not be able to hold up. And we see his game plan kind of exposed. So I'd like to challenge his coaching staff and see what they could do to have Tua continue these games late in the season and also into the playoffs to start a run for them.
Yeah, and I know I can't settle your guys' concerns because the Patriots are the Patriots. Mac looked fantastic, completing 25 of 30 passes against the Buffalo Bills and having probably the best game of his career. And while that could have potentially continued against a Miami Dolphins defense that ranks the bottom half of the league and has struggled to get things going, they look good. I felt like they humbled Mac. They were able to get him looking uncomfortable again. I think there are some times where, once again, the lack of talent surrounding Mac kind of laid bare. It was once again clearly an issue that the Patriots wide receivers core, which is once again now getting thinner, with Kendrick Bourne, who went for a catch and run TD, was put him up 7-0 in the game yesterday. Now out for the season with a torn ACL. So down their number one receiver, they're going to need Juju Smith-Schuster and somebody Charlie mentioned to me, Demario Douglas, to step up in that receiving core. But I understand that despite the impressive performance of the Miami defense, getting to Mac 3 times. Jalen Ramsey turning around that secondary a little bit, getting a nice pick return. I think that we're going to see the Dolphins start to prove their mettle. And I won't go on you guys too hard for your fear of seeing the Dolphins dominate the league for the next few years, but we're going to revisit this sometime soon, and I'm going to hopefully have a contending team to show you guys. Because right now, I think they are the hottest team in the AFC. They clearly beat the Patriots when the Bills couldn't. And while they lost to the Bills earlier in the year, I do like this Dolphins team and where they're headed. And with that, we're going to shift the focus onto not the Bills, but another AFC East rival. We're going to shift the focus onto the New York Jets, who had to rely on some very dire straits to get things done against the New York Giants yesterday. Graham Gano missed a 33-yard field goal that would have put this game a 6-point game, with the Jets having no timeouts and less than a minute left to score. And that missed field goal decidedly changed the game for everyone. We saw Zach Wilson march the Jets down to score. Greg Zuerlein score a field goal to tie the game. Giants not able to do anything in overtime, and the Jets are able to seal this one out, winning 13-10. So, Charlie, I'm going to pass this one to you first. How are we feeling about that absolute heart attack of a game?
That game was hair pulling. I literally gave up with like 50 seconds left. I threw up my jersey. I needed to go upstairs, calm myself down, and then all I hear is from my sister that the Giants missed the field goal. So I was right back into the zone, and I saw Zach Wilson lead this team with like 20-something seconds left, 2 for 2, 50 yards, so enough to kick a field goal, go right into halftime. And I actually have a pretty cool fact about Zach Wilson. About everyone drafted in that 2021 QB class, Zach Wilson leads them in fourth quarter comebacks with 6. And one more thing before I get it off the tab, I do want to give a shout out to another Giants player. Kayvon Thibodeau actually stepped up in this game. He had 6 tackles and 3 sacks as well.
Guys, legit. I know we don't have the biggest O-line, but yeah, Tev, real quick, I just wanted to hop on Charlie's hype of Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, I'm happy with Sauce Gardner, but Thibodeau's a dog too, and I'm happy to see both doing well in New York.
Well, not to continue to bash on the Jets. I said it earlier this season. Looks like I was wrong, but am I completely wrong? They got the win. I said if Zach Wilson could find a way to put together a decent game, their defense and everyone else could get the job done for him. It was a decent game, 17 for 36. Not the best, but he threw for 240 yards, a touchdown. But he also got sacked 4 times. Like you guys said, the O-line wasn't the best for him. You seen him scrambling, using those happy feet that you see a lot of these QB coaches use a lot and analysts use a lot. Garrett Wilson also was able to break free off 13 targets at 7 catches, 100 yards. He broke free in that secondary, even though the game was ugly. We saw a few plays here and there that looked good and bright. I still have hope for this defense. Yeah, it was ugly, and we kind of said it might have been ugly during our preview, Matt. We said that this game wasn't going to be a blowout or anything. We said that it was going to be a close one, and to an extent, we were right. So
I was more right than I ever wanted to be on that one. And Tev, I know that 17 for 36 looks really, really bad. And I know you were already like singing some silver linings about Zach there. But from 67 completion percentage of the last 3 games, at least he wasn't turning the ball over in this one. And those 19 incompletions were incompletions. They hit the ground. But this offensive line for the Jets just took another step in the wrong direction. So not only are we going to see Casey McGovern week to week with a fractured kneecap, but we are also going to see backup offensive lineman Wes Schweitzer out in the game. We saw a practice squad right guard Xavier Newman take snaps at center, and he had a botched snap that ended up costing us a possession. It turned the ball over, and that one wasn't on Zach. So I would say that this game was just very, very ugly. I know the Giants very famously could not pass the ball with Tommy DeVito in after Tyrod Taylor went out with a very painful-looking rib injury. So I got to say that for as ugly of a game as this is, I do think about some sentiments that you told me, Tev, that just like you said, if Zach can just play decent enough to get the win, they can win. And Zach made the 2 throws that he needed to at the time that needed to be done. And he was able to spike that ball with 1 second left while I was screaming at that TV and really didn't think that ball was going to be snapped. So I'm celebrating this win, as ugly as it was. We're 4-3, which feels a lot better than being 3-4. And I'm going to move us forward. We did an AFC East rival of the Dolphins, and now we're going to do the NFC East rival of the Giants. We're going to see the Dallas Cowboys get things going against the Los Angeles Rams. Congrats to Papa McVay, head coach of the Rams. Sean McVay became a father on Tuesday when his wife gave birth. However, I think everyone's focus was a little elsewhere heading into this game because the Cowboys smacked them in the mouth. 33-3 at the half, and just was not going anywhere from there. Matt Stafford looked a little better because he was 3 for 3 after the end of the half on the one drive that he did play in the second half. He did get a 20-yard touchdown to Ben Skoranek, but at the same time, Stafford 10 of 19, 107 yards and an interception in that first half. Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman were not able to really come into factor after getting 30 combined carries last week against Pittsburgh, and just an overall ugly performance for the Rams. Guys, what takeaways do you have here? Is this more on the Cowboys showing up and showing that they're still a league superpower, or is this the Rams just really getting caught lacking?
I would say this is more of the Cowboys just being a really good team, because when they have everything all together, when the coaching and the players are synced, this team is pretty good. Like, for example, Dak Prescott had over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns in this game. CeeDee Lamb probably played the best game of his career with two catches, 158 and 2 touchdowns. But I felt like everybody just played as a one cohesive unit. Despite them only getting 3 sacks in the first drive, the Cowboys came into there and whipped them.
Charlie, I'm glad that you brought up that when this Cowboys staff and team play together, they're one of the best teams in the league. I believe that too. As much as I bash on Dak, and as much as I kind of make it seem like he's a bottom tier quarterback, it's because I have such high hopes for him coming in and the way he took over the job and how explosive he was. I believe that as well. And at this point, if Dak still has this in his tank, and Dak was insanely accurate, throwing 25 for 31. He got the ball where it needed to be. Yeah, Matt was right as well. It was a blowout. Their game plan came out to execute and to keep scoring, and they kept scoring. Defense got stops. This is another team. We need to look at their coaching staff. We need to someone needs to talk to that staff and find out a game plan that works for Dak and works for this team. Because if they could come out every week like this, they're Super Bowl contenders. And it's scary to say, if they do work like this, they could beat any team in the league.
Yeah, and they have had some ups and downs. Obviously, a loss to the Cardinals. They did lose Trayvon Diggs for the season. So this team has really been through a roller coaster through its first 7 games. And I'm really impressed to see the statement win that they pulled out. I think Sean McVay, I genuinely think that there is something there in terms of, I don't think his focus was on the game, and family does come first. But after having a quote of the baby should know better than to come out on Sunday because I'm going to be coaching, you did not seem to be coaching to the best of your ability there. And that's fine. But yeah, I digress. I am going to now move us forward. We made Thev talk about a quarterback he doesn't necessarily like, so let's bring up one he loves. The one that led his Carolina Panthers team to their first win of the season, Bryce Young, avoiding tying Eli Manning for the 3rd most losses to start a career as a starting quarterback. And while that's not the worst company to be in, something tells me that Bryce Young isn't too worried about that. And Tev, I'm going to give the floor right to you. How do we feel about the Panthers pulling that one out at the last second to the Texans?
So the Panthers pulling that out. First off, credit to his defense. Yeah, it was a sloppy game, but when it came down to it, the defense was getting stops. D-line was getting tip passes. Derek Brown still is proven to be an elite interior defensive lineman. Trying to put his name on the map, but it's kind of hard to put your name on the map as an interior lineman when the team isn't the best. But this game proved it. They made CJ Stroud look very uncomfortable. And even when he did throw the ball, sometimes they weren't able to get down to him because that O-line played so well, but they were able to bat down the ball. Bryce Young, I mean, Bryce Young threw his deepest pass this season for 40 yards to Jonathan Mingo. That's something huge. Rookie to rookie connection. That's something I could talk about for hours. But just to close it out, Bryce Young looked very game manageable and looked like he's going to be in the league for a very, very long time. And he's going to be just fine. And I love this win.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, honestly. I think that Bryce not only had his longest throw, but his second longest throw. And while I was unfortunately not able to catch the one with Mingo, I did see him rolling to the left side of the pocket, his non-throwing side of the pocket, turn around, and much like a very pretty throw we saw Zach Wilson throw on his BYU Pro Day during the pre-draft process that earned him a lot of headlines. We saw Bryce Young complete that pass to Adam Thielen in the middle of a game. That was a 31-yard pass to Thielen, and while that drive did not end up producing any points, the Texans stood and forced a turnover on downs within the red zone. I was just really impressed with the moments where Bryce Young seemed to click. I'm right there with you, Tev, and honestly, I'm not even too against CJ Stroud. He looked a little bit more of a rookie per se this game. He missed some throws, including a deep one to Nico Collins when he broke free down the field, but he also didn't necessarily, even though he only had 140 yards and only threw the ball 24 times, completing 16. I felt like he still had a very respectable performance. While I brought up a bad throw to Collins in the first quarter at some point, I also found him making 2 dart throws, one to Collins himself for a toe tap on the sideline, and also the first quarter. And then I believe 1 quarter later, we saw him throw an absolute dart in between 2 Panthers defenders, right to Noah Brown, got him in good position once again. So I'm really impressed by both quarterbacks, and despite the low-scoring outcome of the game, I think that this game did have the fireworks I anticipated.
Honestly, same as well here. I agree with you with that. Bryce Young played pretty well going against another rookie quarterback, but one player I do want to mention as well, who really kind of helped this Panthers team to win, is former Jet linebacker Frankie Louvu. He had 7 total tackles and a sack. This defense looked very ferocious, very physical. But one thing I am concerned with the Panthers is that the work with Miles Sanders. He only got two carries in the game with 0 yards. Like, you paid this man about a 3-year deal, and you're only using him for 2 times in the game. This is very concerning.
4 years, $26 million, and I don't think we're going to see year 2 of Miles Sanders if he continues to be putting up no-shows. I think that this is a sign that the coaching staff and Thomas Brown actually prefers Trooper Hubbard, who's got, compared to Sanders' 2 carries, Chuba carried the ball 15 times for a moderate 28 yards. But regardless, it shows who that backfield trusts. And one last stat before I move us on. On one side, you mentioned Frankie Louvu, another Jets legend. Blake Cashman also got a sack this week, and 1 of 6 on Bryce Young. John Greener got 2.5 sacks, and Malik Collins, the former Cowboy defensive tackle, also got 2 sacks. I did predict Will Anderson to get a sack as well on Bryce Young, the 3rd overall pick, come into play in a game that highlighted the 1st and 2nd overall pick even more. But that didn't happen. He just ended up participating in a day where the rest of the defensive line went crazy. And another place where you think the defensive line would go crazy is over in FedEx Field with the Philadelphia Eagles and that fearsome defensive front taking on Sam Howell, his 40 sacks in 7 games, and the Washington Commanders, the turnstile offensive line. I thought that was going to be a blowout. I thought that the Commanders would have gotten everything out of their system in that 34-31 overtime loss, and I was wrong. They once again put their best foot forward and led that game into halftime. A.J. Brown had to once again take over the game, his 6th straight 125-yard plus game. Record-breaking. He owns the record on his own now, surpassing Calvin Johnson, and credit to him. He was needed for this win because the Commanders did not take this one lightly.
Both Commanders and Eagles did not play very good defense as well. Both teams had quarterbacks that go over 4 touchdowns in this game. But there's one player I do have in mind, though, I really want to talk about is number 11 for the Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown. 6th consecutive week with over 125 yards. This game, he had 8 for 130 and 2 touchdowns. And honestly, a lot of people are talking about Tyreek Hill becoming an MVP candidate. I think A.J. Brown could potentially be an MVP candidate. Like we have never seen this streak in the NFL history. Besides, like you said, Calvin Johnson. And another player I do want to talk about really quick is Julio Jones gets his first touchdown as a Philadelphia Eagle. It's only the one catch for 8 yards, but I think if this when he eventually gets more into the offense, I think this offense is going to be just as scary, like honestly more dangerous than last year's offense.
Yeah, you guys hit it on the nail. The defense was non-existent on both ends. Washington really shocked me, and Ron Rivera really shocked me. They went out with a game plan to really attack certain points, and they made the offense really thrive around Sam Howell, and were also able to stop that D line, like you said. You guys hit all the points that I really wanted to bring up. Only got sacked one time. You kind of expected him to have a 4 or 5 sack game on the Philadelphia Eagles side. But like you said, this O-line schemed very, very well. We're able to keep Sam Howell protected enough to throw those 4 touchdowns and damn near 400 yards. But Eagles came out on top. It just came down to coaching staff. And I believe just the better team and better players came out on top.
Yeah, I think we saw in the second half as the Eagles took over that game. AJ Brown's second touchdown tied it up, and they did never look back after that. And there's one other wide receiver in this game that I really wanted to shout out. Among the Commanders' big passing attack was another former Jet, Jamison Crowder. 7 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. He had a big punt return earlier in the season that made me realize that the Duke prospect that ended up in New York after being drafted originally by the Commanders has made his way back there in the later parts of his career. I wish him all the best. And Sam Howell, just for the sake of sharing the stat line, 39 to 51, 397 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. He was 24 for 26 at the half. And I was just really, really impressed with Sammy Sosa. He balled out, as Ted brought up, 1 sack, which was, to me, a fantastic thing to see. Hopefully this keeps up for him and we can keep him out of danger so he can continue developing the way he is, because he's really impressing me. Another player that seems to be really impressing me right now is Travis Etienne. He just can't stop. This running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars has continued to see a huge part of this workload. He had 24 rushes, 14 of those in the first half, 79 yards, including and also an additional 70 yards on 3 catches, including a 56-yard touchdown catch. This Jacksonville Jaguars team didn't have to worry too much with the Steelers, especially according to some Steelers players, due to some very convenient refereeing. But at the same time, Jags pull this one out. Travis Etienne is a big reason for that, and he's my key factor for the game. Actually, real quick before I set the floor to you guys, there are 2 other players on the Jaguars I want to shout out real quick. Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker were responsible for the 3 sacks on the Steelers. Allen getting 2. He has had 3 multi-sack games on the season and 9 sacks on the year. And Trayvon Walker has 3.5 sacks this year. He notched another sack this past week. And this first overall pick has continued to develop behind the scenes very, very well for this Jacksonville defense, who, now that we're talking about a contending unit, we kind of forgot that they had the first overall pick 2 years ago, right?
Both former number 1 picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars actually played very well. But one thing I am concerned with in this game is that Kenny Pickett's injury, because he took a really huge shot and he didn't come back into the game, despite that he had 10 for 16, 73 yards. But the former top 3 pick of the 2017 draft, Mitchell Trubisky, came in as his backup and threw for 15 out of 27, 138. He had a touchdown and 2 picks. I think this is going to be, if this injury to Kenny Pickett is worse than we thought, this is going to be we're going to see the downfall of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This run game is really inefficient. You only gave Jalen Warren and Najee Harris combined 12 carries. But yeah, it's pretty ridiculous out here. It's like Matt Canada needs to go.
Tev, actually, before you go, I wanted to ask you a question based on what Charlie said. Do you think we're going to see a worse level of quarterback and offensive output by this Pittsburgh Steelers team if Mitch Trubisky takes over the helm?
I was just going to bring up, that was my first point and actually one of my main points, besides another bomb I'm going to drop on you guys. Mitch Trubisky is going to have comparable games to what he had when he came in, 15 for 27, 138. I don't see him really throwing for more than 250 or even having a multiple touchdown game. This is the downfall of the Steelers. Steelers fans, say goodbye to Matt Canada by the end of the year. And also, bombshell, say goodbye to Najee Harris. Najee Harris has looked a step behind all season. And truthfully, he isn't filling up to that role all season, only having 313 yards on 84 carries on one TD, and is right under 4 yards a carry. He isn't filling up to what potential he had. Either I see him, they're riding out that rookie contract because he is still in a rookie contract, or they get rid of him early and say their downfall and give the backfield to Jalen Warren.
I gave Matt Canada and the Steelers offense a bit of a hall pass for their solid outcome. No real weaknesses last week against Los Angeles, but it does continue to look relatively daunting. I think whether it's Pickett out there or Trubisky, I think we're going to see some volatile play. Kenny Pickett had an awful throw. That was actually a drop pick by Trey Herndon. I think that his stat line could have looked much worse on the day, and I think Kenny Pickett hasn't necessarily had any sort of big breakout game. He's had the games where he's kept the critics off his back, but Kenny Pickett to me isn't necessarily an upgrade over Mitch Trubisky. So what I was getting at when I asked that question was, I think Mitch Trubisky might give the Steelers offense a little bit of a jump over the next few weeks until they figure him out. I think just like Tyrod Taylor came in and changed the offense a bit, Trubisky might do the same thing. But let me strike while the iron's hot. We were talking about an injured quarterback. No bigger injury this week probably than Kirk Cousins, who tore his Achilles against the Packers, recently confirmed by Vikings officials. And where do we see the Vikings going from here, despite a relatively impressive win over the Packers?
Yeah, despite the like you said, despite the win over the Packers, this Kirk Cousins injury is kind of a coincidence compared to Aaron Rodgers, because both veteran quarterbacks both played in the NFC North. Yet Rodgers comes to the Jets, towards his Achilles, and now the backup to those veteran quarterbacks are former BYU quarterbacks. We got for the Vikings, Jaron Hall, and obviously for the Jets, Zach Wilson. So I just wanted to say that was a pretty funny coincidence. But despite that, KJ Osborne had a pretty good game. He almost had 100 yards, 8 for 99. Jordan Addison also had 7 for 82 and a touchdown. I just felt like this game was out of reach for the Packers. This Packers team is falling down a cliff. But in one more thing before we move on to Thev, I just saw earlier today that Michigan Wolverine Rashard Gary actually signed a $100 million extension with the Packers.
Big shout out, Rashawn Gary, Michigan guy.
Former Jersey native as well.
Big shout out, get paid. But that was the least of their concerns, extending him. More so the concern is trying to find someone to work with Jordan Love this offseason. I think they should go into offseason mode. I think they should go into really prepare for next season mode early. I know it's extremely early. We're really at mid-season, and we're really saying this, but it really gets dark for them. This offense looks very stagnant at times. Jordan's Love forced to play hero ball, and clearly it's not working. And quite frankly, I don't want to give the blame all to him. I feel like this coaching staff can't understand him yet and can't get the play calls. Sometimes play calls look amazing. Sometimes you're questioning why is that being called, and what are they seeing when they call that? And also Jordan Love's ability to audible at the line. But I feel like we got to get a more sample size before we start questioning stuff. But yeah, they need to advance to off-season mode.
Jordan Love definitely has some moments where he looks good. On that touchdown drive in the third quarter, he went 8 of 10, 69 yards, and that score. There are some good moments. Obviously, that kind of gets overlooked when the rest of the day you go 16 for 31. Much less impressive completion percentage when you look at it that way. And I also just think that right now, like both of you guys hinted at, we're starting to have to question the Packers organization as a whole. Are there issues with the coaching for the reason that Jordan Love, even after having a few years and being the designated guy to succeed Rodgers, is not looking like he's very prepared for it? So I'm starting to wonder how much of that has to do with Matt LaFleur and his coaching. How much could he have potentially gotten bailed out by Aaron Rodgers' stellar play over the back nine of his career? And I don't want to take it fully against the Packers. I think the Vikings did a lot to win this game. I think they rallied very well. Cam Akers got into the end zone for his first touchdown as a Viking. And this defense definitely saw some young improving names step up under Brian Flores' defense. DJ Woonham was involved in 3 sacks, 2 half sacks, so it does come up as 2.0. And what was it? Cameron Bynum, after getting 2 picks in their win against San Francisco, he had another half sack this week. So while Kirk is going to be out for the rest of the year and Jaron Hall is going to get his chance, this young Vikings team that has kind of started to turn over a new leaf in terms of shedding veteran talent is going to have a good opportunity to evaluate their talent this year and see that despite the lack of a starting quarterback, veteran quarterback like they had in Cousins, if Hall will be able to be the next man up and show some success. If not, it's looking like we're going to see the rebuild that we were planning the Vikings to have during their 1-3 start. I'm going to move us on to the last NFC team that played in the 1 o'clock window. They played against the Indianapolis Colts, and that would be the New Orleans Saints that pulled it out 38-27. There was a much needed get right game by Derek Carr particularly. He had 19-27. He had 310 total yards and 2 touchdowns. And with the help of Rashid Shaheed, who on 2 of those catches from Carr had 109 yards and actually caught a third one from Taysom Hill for 44 yards. So this Saints defense was able to move the ball on the Colts secondary, and the Colts offense with Gardner Minshew was just not able to keep up. Once again, he had some big plays, but once again, also looking relatively not too hot in between them. We saw Minshew 23 of 41, 213 yards. That's about a 5-yard per attempt with 2 touchdowns and a pick. And I wrote down to him in my notes, Gardner Minshew. I think the Minshew magic is over. I think that this Colts offense is going to start to take a little bit of a hit because I don't think that Gardner Minshew is capable of really taking them too far. We saw him target Mike Pittman quite a bit after Mike Pittman complained a little bit to the media. Pittman went 8 targets, 6 catches in the first half, finished the day with 8 catches for 40 yards and a score. But I think that really it's just the running game of this Colts team that's really holding them together. So if they're going to get behind like they did against the Saints and the firepower that the Saints had on offense click the way it did today, I don't see the Colts as being a team that's able to handle that firepower. So props to the Saints. I thought they were going to be dejected and heading in the wrong direction, but this was clearly a get-right game and hopefully going to instill some positive momentum in what's still probably the most talented team in the NFC South.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be the most dominant NFC East team. I still think Tampa could potentially still win this division. I think they're probably the best team despite them losing on Thursday. But I do want to give a shout out to Derek Carr, who really redeemed himself compared to last Thursday night when they played against Jacksonville, overthrowing receivers, not having the same chemistry. But I do want to give another quick shout out to Taysom Hill, who had a pretty interesting game. He led the team in rushing yards with 9 for 63, had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he also had that one big play that he had passing for 44 yards on that big play. But like you said, this Gardner Minshew is not gonna give him not gonna really give him that push to really win games. He'll keep you in there, but he's not gonna really go in there and help you win a clutch game. But yeah, this is a big win for New Orleans, and the division is still open.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Taysom Hill's interesting game. I like that they utilized him a lot more this week in a lot better fashion. And I like that they kept Alvin Kamara under 30 touches. Sounds crazy, but he finished with 21 touches. And that's good for the running back life. That's good for his life and his legs. We've said this week in and week out how Kamara's stats always look insane because he is getting about 15 catches and another 15 to 20 carries. So him being able to keep those touches down and then being able to win and nail it out and win was a good one for them. Hopefully they'll be able to grow on to this and continue to win and win this division. But if they can't and Derek Carr can't pull away games like this again and starts to look disgruntled and away from receivers, it's going to be a dark season.
No, it absolutely will. And with the Saints hosting the Bears next week, hopefully they can keep things right for at least another week. It would be really, really sad and really, really disappointing for probably their organization themselves to take a statement win like this and turn around and lose at home to a team like the Bears last week. And we'll get to the Bears later and their tough performance against the Chargers last night. But in the meantime, there is one last 1 p.m. window game that I want to get into, and it was a very, very headline-driven one. One where we saw two quarterbacks in for both teams between Malik Willis and Will Levis in for the Titans, and Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke both taking snaps for the Falcons. And with four quarterbacks to choose from, who do we want to talk about? I'm assuming maybe not Willis and his early fumble and limited snaps, but there were three quarterbacks that really got extended throwing time, including a rookie in his debut.
And I would love to talk about the rookie that likes to put mayo in his coffee for some reason because he's a psychopath. But he is a psychopath on the field. His honestly his debut game against a pretty good Falcons secondary, he killed it. He went for 19 out of 29, 238 yards, 4 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins resurrected prime Houston Hopkins. He had 4 catches, 128 yards, and 3 touchdowns. If Will Levis can play like this, not like a 4 touchdown game every week, but he could play if he can limit turnovers and actually play actually game manage. This team could potentially still be a wild card contender. This Titans team still has it. Their defense is still pretty solid, especially their run defense. They got guys like Jeffrey Simmons and D'Amico Autry inside there who are really good getting after the RBs and the quarterbacks. And for the Falcons side, Zach was right all along. You know who else was very disappointing? Desmond Ridder, because he had I think 8 turnovers in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and it's showing because he got benched and was evaluated for a concussion. So Taylor Heineke actually stepped up, played pretty solid. He had 175 yards and a touchdown, but it wasn't enough to get the win. But I really do like this Titans team. I feel like if Levis can play like this, they can start getting some pretty good wins.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about another rookie. Granted, I'll bring up Taylor Heineke right after. Bijan Robinson was able to get a touchdown this week, 11 carries, 62 yards, about 6 yards, 5.5 yards to carry. Wasn't able to break free in the pass game. Granted, I'll chalk that up to the 2 quarterbacks shuffle. One of them not playing amazing. The other one, I believe, was not ready to come in this early into the season. Taylor, I believe, is a serviceable backup and will be able to take over this offense pretty well. Granted, they did get this loss. They're sitting at 4-4, which isn't bad. Like you said about the Titans, how they're a 3-4 team will be able to, if they're able to rally, they'll be able to get a wild card push. I believe if this team could rally, they could win this weak division. I believe they can give Tampa Bay a run for their money, and they also could give the Saints a run for their money. So if Taylor Heineke could really be serviceable, kind of like a Zach Wilson effect, they could get out this division and win out this division.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. I want to point out a little difference in the way that things got done when Heineke went on the field. Is Ridder, with 12 passes, threw for 71 yards, and Heineke, with just 9 more attempts, had 100 more. I felt like Heineke showed a better sense of getting the ball down the field and a better ability to. And we saw Bijan Robinson, not with Ridder and not with Heineke, receive a single catch this week. We saw him do all his damage on the ground, 11 rushes, and Thev pointed that out. I also wanted to bring up Derrick Henry, who I thought was having his last touchdown this week against the Falcons for the Titans. But he might be sticking around if the Titans continue to piece things together. They might not have to blow things up after all. And this was a big way to win a game with a rookie quarterback that you weren't even sure who was going to start. Now all of a sudden you can put a little faith throwing him out there against against Pittsburgh on Thursday night. And now let's get into the 4 o'clock slate of games. So we are going to go to a game that was my upset of the week, despite the teams having a similar record. I thought that the Browns would find a way to overcome their injuries to deal a loss to the Seahawks, who Geno Smith, despite some up and down play, continuing after pointing it out through his last 4 games, 4-4 touchdown interception ratio. Geno Smith threw another 2 picks and almost had a third. Bailed out, though, and due to that, was able to lead his team for a game-winning touchdown drive, getting the ball to the rookie Jackson Smith-Njigba for the win over the Browns 24-20. How are we feeling about that game? Not necessarily as drunk as the game last week against the Colts, but the Browns are playing some very unconventional football right now.
Yeah, the Browns are starting to. I think even with Deshaun Watson, when he eventually comes back healthy, I don't think this team can really do too much. That division is too stacked. The Bengals are starting to heat up now. They usually do this around this time of year. The Ravens are probably the best team in that division, and I think the Browns are going to start fizzling out of the division race. But for the Seahawks, they didn't really play that well, despite them getting the win. Geno Smith had 254 yards. He also threw 2 picks and had 2 touchdowns. DK Metcalf was coming off the rib injury, but he still had a pretty all right game, 5 for 67. Tyler Lockett actually led the team in receiving, 8 for 81 and a touchdown. I just felt like this game could go either way, and the home team won. So honestly, I think Seattle was the better team in this. And honestly, right now, currently, they are first place in their division, right behind the 49ers.
I like that you brought up everyone else's stat. I believe this team is good enough to win games without Geno Smith having to play amazing. Kenneth Walker, 8 carries, 66 yards, 8 yards a carry. He's been looking pretty good all season. Able to keep fresh legs because Zach Charbonnet is able to have 5 carries for 50 yards. Yeah, they didn't score a touchdown, but they're able to keep the ball moving, keep accumulating first downs. Both broke free for big rushes. They're able to keep the offense running, and then on top of it, there's 3 receivers combined for 16 catches for 184 yards, like you brought up individually. This team is able to keep, if the team's able to keep the ball moving, and their playmakers are able to make plays, Geno Smith doesn't have to play spectacular to the extent that he played last season. Nobody expected him to play exactly like last season. We expected him to take a step back. Yeah, he got paid and everything, but compared to other contracts, like I said all season, his contract is dispensable. So he isn't playing dispensable right now. And yeah, the turnover issue is something he needs to attack and needs to work on. But I believe he could do that. And this team is in a good situation. Like you said, they're tied for first in their division.
So it wasn't quite Michael Jordan's flu game, but Mahomes survived against the Denver Broncos. Had some tough turnovers, actually 3 total with a strip sack and 2 interceptions. But this Chiefs team in totality just couldn't hang with Denver, who had control of the game ever since the beginning. How do we feel about Denver's turnaround? All of a sudden, now there's 3 straight games allowing less than 20 points, with 2 of those against the Chiefs, after only doing so once over the first 5 games of the season.
I think the performance we saw from the Denver Broncos, especially their defense, was pretty the best thing. The best way to stop Mahomes is that Justin Simmons is honestly the Patrick Mahomes' kryptonite. He's always locked down on their best receivers. Travis Kelce wasn't really that effective this week. The Broncos defense in general just played very physical. They played very tight coverage, and Mahomes couldn't really do any Mahomes type of plays. And Russell, on the other side of the ball, Russell Wilson played very well, despite only going for 12 for 19, 114 yards. But he also had 3 touchdowns. And Javonte Williams got the ball a lot as well. So I'm honestly very shocked, and I see this as probably the upset of the season, in my opinion.
And Tev, you actually had that upset pointed out 2 weeks ago when this game was in the first one of the season. You were just 1 installment off. It just took 1 more game for it to happen. How do you feel about seeing your prediction come true a bite a little late?
I kind of saw this coming. The offense like you guys said, looked a little stagnant at times, but they were able to pull it through because Pat Mahomes is their quarterback. Today, like you said, the flu game, he was able to survive physically, but he wasn't able to survive and get the win out like he usually is. On the other side of the ball, this offense looked very consistent, which is shocking for this offense. The defense was able to stop Mahomes. Jerry Jeudy was able to accumulate a touchdown, and they're able to get an upset and get a good win, a good morale win. I'm not saying they're going to get a lot more of these. I'm not saying they're going to get a lot less, but it was a good morale win.
Yeah, it was a great win for the Broncos. Chiefs definitely had some mess ups there. McCole Harmon, I think, about buffing a punt. But ultimately, this is just a game that was dropped. This wasn't meant for the Chiefs to win. And after seeing how good they looked through the first seven, I'm not too worried about all that. So moving on, we're going to see the fan base of one team is slowly getting calmed down after a very, very shaky start, while the other side is starting to panic after their 5-0 start and being considered the best team in the league. This San Francisco 49ers roster has fallen far fairly quickly. Dealing with some injuries still, Brock Purdy was able to clear the concussion protocol and continued to struggle over his last three games. We're starting to see the turnovers pile up. We saw him have another two interceptions this week, and the 49ers overall turned the ball over three times in the second half. Just not able to get it done against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. 31-17. How do we see these two teams heading into the second half of the season?
I really see these two teams kind of like being around the same type of tier because I think the Bengals and the 49ers are still going to be one of the better teams in the league, especially when it comes to playoff time. Like despite their records right now, I think they're a way better team than they are now. But I am really concerned with Brock Purdy and how quick he was able to come back into this week's game. Like I know Monday night he had that concussion on that push type of play at the goal line. He was cleared pretty quick, so I was pretty concerned about that. But yeah, the 49ers defense really fell apart. It really gave Joe Burrow honestly a pretty easy game. He went 28 out of 32, 283 and three touchdowns. Joe Burrow was unstoppable, and I think this is like I said earlier. I think this is the time where the Bengals are going to start winning games and they're going to start taking over this AFC.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up. The Bengals are hot right now. They're going to continue to be hot throughout the second half of the season. I'm not too worried about San Francisco, more or less. They might not win their division, but they're still going to be in the playoffs. Um, San Francisco, I feel like they're just battling injuries. Christian McCaffrey was still able to get into the end zone multiple times. So there's no problem with that. It's more so, like you said, Brock Purdy was rushed out there too early. I believe if he just takes a step back or as he starts to roll through, they'll be fine for the rest of the season.
Yeah, we did see Brock Purdy. One more thing I wanted to bring up. He got moving. He had 5 rushes, 56 yards in the whole game, 4 rushes, 43 yards in the first half. And having to show a little bit more of an improvisational skill, I think that teams are starting to finally catch on to the San Francisco offense. And especially with the injuries, it makes it a little easier. So Purdy now has to prove that he can go off script as well. And I think that's where some of the struggles over the last 3 weeks have come out. Not and I what was it specifically that really ugly pick thrown over the middle of the field to Akeem Davis Gaithers, that turned this game into a two-score game. I just think Purdy kind of cost him the game this week. And while things could be looking up for the very promising rookie, it was a tough performance to stomach from a quarterback, even coming off concussion protocol. And that leaves us with one 4 o'clock window game, a game that me and Tev saw as pretty strong locks, ended up getting close there at the end. The Ravens were up 31-15 on the Cardinals and ended up seeing that lead brought to a whopping 7 points and pulling that one out 31-24 as Arizona ran out of time to make their comeback. Josh Dobbs looked awful as the game started. He actually started the game 8 for 12, 55 yards, and an interception. Things got better from there. He was able to use his legs to make some plays. He was able to dial in with Trey McBride, who had 9 catches, 73 yards on 13 targets in relief for Zach Ertz, who went on IR. And the Cardinals continue to look pretty competitive at times. After dropping second halves by a combined 74 points, they finally won a second half, per se. How do we feel about the Cardinals? Are there some silver linings to take away here, or the Ravens played down to their competition this week?
I think the Ravens played down to their competition, and I want to say exactly for Lamar Jackson. This game for Lamar should have been like a social media type of game. He had like these crazy numbers and a bunch of touchdowns, but honestly, this Cardinals defense locked down Lamar pretty well, and only allowing probably their best option, Mark Andrews, to only 4 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. But I want to give a quick little shout out to former Rutgers running back Gus Edwards. He had 19 carries, 80 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the game, really leading this team to victory. But yeah, shout out Baltimore. They get a pretty easy win, and now they're up 6-2, and number 1 in their division.
My prediction was kind of split 50-50. I said that Lamar and this team, to an extent that Charlie said, it was kind of going to have that social media game, was going to do whatever they wanted. Granted, they weren't, but they still were able to score as much as they wanted with Gus Edwards, who broke free, was able to really just do whatever he really wanted. But more or less, like, to answer your question, I believe in the fourth quarter, it was more so a 5-2 team at the time, believing that they moved on to 6-2 and kind of just gave up. And it almost costed them the game. But they were able to, like you said, clamp up a little bit, and time management were able to save them.
Yeah, as well as a holding penalty on Paris Johnson. Originally, that was supposed to be an 8-point game, and instead had to be brought back down to a 10-point game because Paris Johnson had a holding call on Josh Dobbs successfully scrambling into the end zone on that play. So Dobbs' 2-point conversion was taken back, and the first-round rookie, the top 10 pick, unfortunately cost his team a few points that could have potentially made you say, what if, as the game went on. But the Ravens get it done and advance to 6-2. And for now, have not dropped one since Thev boldly predicted that the Ravens will not drop a game this year. This leaves us with only our Sunday night football game left to review. We got a couple previews for you coming along, too, with the Las Vegas Raiders, the Detroit Lions playing tonight, and the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis going into Pittsburgh to play the reeling Steelers. For now, though, we're talking about Bagent Zero. We're talking about Tyson Bagent and the Chicago Bears, who put up a very solid performance against the Raiders, could not necessarily capitalize on this one, falling to a Justin Herbert masterclass, and Austin Eckler getting involved in the receiving game as well. But Tev, we spoke at lengths about Justin Herbert and his impact on this game with our Week 8 preview. But did you see anything else from this game that really caught your eye?
More so, I guess maybe I was so tunneled in on checking out on Herbert and see how he reacted. The biggest thing that caught my eye is, at first I was like, wait, Herbert seems like he's really cool. He's really collected. It seems like he's doing whatever he wants behind that line. Then later on, I started to watch. Herbert didn't get pressured or sacked. This O-line held up. And it's like laughable to say, but Herbert was able to capitalize on that. Only missing on 9 passes and threw the ball 40 times and almost for 300 yards, 3 TDs. When a quarterback is able to not get sacked or even pressured, you that's the bright side. And when your name is Justin Herbert, you're gonna definitely win the game in a very easily fashion. They didn't need to go to Austin Eckler a lot. They were able to get the ball done in the air, and it was a good morale win for the team and for Justin Herbert.
And for me as well, I want to touch on a quick player really quick. The Chargers' first-round pick this year, Quentin Johnson, actually having somewhat of a little bit of success this week, five catches for 50 yards. I feel like through weeks 1 and 7, he was not there at all. They really needed him really more since Mike Evans went down with the ACL injury. I just feel like now we're going to see Quentin Johnson's name get talked around a little bit more often. I feel like the second half of the year is going to be big for Quentin Johnson's develop and his positioning in the NFL, because everyone has been saying like he's been a bust, a first-round pick. They could have got a guy like Jordan Addison, who's been playing very well throughout his rookie year so far. But I feel like Quentin Johnson's going to be another guy I want to see kind of break out for the second half of the year. But like you said with the Bears had no pass rush in the game. But for the Bears side of the offensive side, it was a disaster. Their best player was Cole Kmet, 10 catches, 79 yards. He played solid, but that Chargers defense actually stepped up and played very well. So, yeah, shout out to the Chargers for getting a good win.
Tyson Bagent, 25 of 37, 232 yards and 2 picks. Could have had a touchdown, actually had Velus Jones wide open, who was on the ground, had a ball fall on him, and just couldn't catch it. I feel like that might be one of the most egregious scraps I've seen all season, and cost Bagent a touchdown that probably wouldn't have done much for the result of the game. But Tyson Bagent did have to stretch the field a little bit more after not having to throw past 11 yards down the field. And ultimately, humbled. I don't think that this was on Badgett for losing. This was a whole team outclassing that happened to the Bears, but definitely a little pumping the brakes on the Badgett hype after this one. One last thing I wanted to bring up, Austin Eckler did definitely show up from the receiving ends of things, including getting the first touchdown on a 39-yarder. He had 7 catches for 94 yards in total. He did lose a fumble, and he did only have 15 rushes for 29 yards. And I just wanted to point out how Bears that is, because the Bears do have the 29th ranked passing defense heading into this week and the 5th ranked rushing defense. So I feel Eckler is a clear example of what the Bears are good and not good at doing on defense. And lastly, now we just have previews to bring you guys before we wrap up this episode today. We have the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Detroit Lions, and this one we're going to do quick hits. I'm going to say that I'm taking the Detroit Lions. No reason to go against them. They are going to rally back from that really bad shellacking they took against the Ravens, and I think that this is going to be a comfortable Detroit win.
I agree with you as well. This was actually my lock of the week. I did have Detroit coming back home after getting embarrassed by the Ravens, and I think they're going to embarrass this Raiders team. This is probably one of their easiest games for the rest of the season, and I think the Lions are going to dominate.
Clean sweep this week because I'm going right over to Motown and gonna ride down with this. I believe that they're gonna embarrass them as well.
I love to hear it. And that leaves us with the last one, Tennessee Titans versus Pittsburgh Steelers, starting up week 9 for us. You know what? I'm taking the Steelers. I think that while Steelers do have propensity to drop tough games, and Matt Canada and Mitch Trubisky and a lot of question marks in terms of the offense, that Tennessee Titans team is riding very, very high, and they're going to have a lot to figure out on a short week with a rookie quarterback. Against Mike Tomlin and that defense with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, and even a Landon Roberts, who got a sack and a half, a former Patriot, last week. This Steelers pass rush is vicious, and while this defense can give up yards, I do think that the Steelers are going to get it done.
This is where I disagree with you. I think the Titans are going to go into Pittsburgh and get a pretty good win. I don't trust Mitch Trubisky against a really good defense like the Tennessee Titans, very physical. I can agree with the same thing as well with Will Levis against the Steelers defense, but I do think which team's going to crack first. I think the Steelers are going to crack. I think Derrick Henry could have another solid back-to-back week game on short notice. So, yeah, give me the Titans over the Steelers.
I'm going to shock both of you guys. I'm going to agree with you, Matt. I believe that the Steelers in Tomlin fashion are going to win this game, and Trubisky is going to be 500 under the realm over these last 2 weeks. And in Steelers fashion, it's going to be a field goal kicking game, and they're going to win this game.
I could see a low-scoring result like that happening very, very well for a Mike Vrabel versus Mike Tomlin matchup, the Battle of the Mikes. And it'll be here before we know it. And soon enough, on Friday, you'll see it Saturday, we'll be talking about those games in the past tense. And that's going to feel like probably a few minutes because, like I said to begin the episode, this season's been flying by. And guys, I'm happy that you've been at my side to watch this one come to fruition.
Absolutely, man. I am really hoping for tonight's game. I'm really hoping for a Sam Laporta masterclass to help me my win fantasy-wise. Let's go rookie tight end.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this back half of the season. And also the trade deadline coming up.
Awesome. We'll probably have plenty to talk about then with the trade deadline too, whether players like Dalvin Cook, Carl Lawson, and Derrick Henry do get traded. CeeDee Lamb was brought up by our podcast as a potential trade target, but things seem to have gotten right there. So at least no trade there expected for this week. But we'll be coming to you on Saturday with the Week 9 preview. Thank you all for watching. And one more time, I'm Matt.
Charlie.
And I'm Tev.
Thank you all for watching. Take care.